All right, I'm here with Captain Tyler Chandler. Captain, it's good to see you today.
Yeah, absolutely. You too.
Well, you serve our Mount Juliet Police Department here in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. There may be people from all over the world that eventually see this, but
Right.
certainly this is for our local community, and you serve our police department. And so, before we get started, just I don't know, give us a little background on Tyler Chandler, who you are, where you're from, how you landed at Mount Juliet Police Department.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in Houston, Texas, and about 9 years old, my dad's job transferred over to Nashville. And we followed, mom and I and my older brother followed this way, and we landed in Mount Juliet. It's funny talking to him and asking, why did you pick Mount Juliet? And the first thing was the schools. And then there's a road called Division Street, but turns into Chandler Road as you go into Nashville. He thought it was just neat to live near Chandler Road. So we found a house in Willoughby Station, and that's where I grew up here. Went to Mount Juliet Elementary when it was the old building at Division, Mount Juliet Road, Mount Juliet Middle School at the West Wilson Middle School, and then Mount Juliet High School at now Mount Juliet Middle School. So I've seen a lot of growth. I've seen a lot of change in this community, and I started at the police department in 2004 after I was involved in the Police Explorer program through high school. And so I always wanted to be a police officer. And thankfully, the department started this Explorer program. I received a call one day from Sergeant Seth Norris. He no longer works here, but he said they're starting an Explorer program. I guess they got my name off a Boy Scout questionnaire where I put I wanted to be in law enforcement when I grew up. And so I got into Explorers, found out that law enforcement was definitely something that I wanted to do, and started here in '04. I was 18 when I started, and I dispatched for about 3 years. And then when I was 21, they sent me to the police academy, and I've been a police officer ever since. And it's been absolutely rewarding career. Definitely enjoy everything that I do and continue to enjoy that, and blessed that the city, obviously paid for my higher education as I worked here. So my undergrad is from Bethel University, and my graduate degree is from Trevecca. And I continue to work and love it. And I think that's what I like to tell folks is when you go after a career, find something you love to do. So when you do go to work every day, you're not really going to work. You're just going to do a hobby or to have fun. And I truly enjoy what I do. I enjoy serving people. I enjoy being able to have influence to make a difference in the community, and it just works out very well, and love it all. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm at. That's how I got here.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. And one of the things, and you and I have talked about, and we've in different groups talk about around the community, is that how community focused the police department is. Obviously, there's a law and order aspect to what you have to do to keep us safe, but y'all have tapped into something over the last few years that's been really important, and I think really a model for other police departments around the nation and other public service organizations around the nation. Talk to us about that and why community building is so important to you.
Sure. So, being a police officer is not just about patrolling, making arrests, and doing traffic enforcement, writing citations. You really have to look at a police officer as a guardian of the community who cares about the well-being of the entire community itself. And that's kind of our approach here. We've always kind of done that through the years. It continues to enhance itself as we continue to move forward and as technology advances to allow us to do more. But we've kind of always been a community-centric police department where we go above and beyond with no matter what it is to try to solve problems in the community, try to be there for the community. And it's, some police departments don't quite understand that connection. We figured it out where a community is safer if the overall well-being of the community is uplifted and there's connections and the police officers have support. And if we can continue to grow that support for our officers, it allows them to do their job much more than what they can do now because they're supported by the people that they serve. They're supported to go out there and find the bad guys and make arrests and keep the community safe. They're supported to patrol. They're supported to chase the bad guys down. The overall safety of the community is enhanced through that. And so that's why we feel a connected community, a community that has a strong bond with the police department is just safer. Because again, they look up to us and we look up to them for guidance, and we work together as a team to keep this city safe. We do this through multiple different ways. Obviously, we feel a strong relationship is built on communication, and that's in anything. That's a husband and wife, that's a parent and child. When you see that relationships aren't going well, it's likely probably a communication issue there. So that's why we think here with us, with our relationship with the community, it's important to have communication. So we are very transparent about what we do as a department. We look for ways to build relationships, such as coffee with a cop, such as our chief on the beats, our engagement with all the parks activities that happen. Most recently, the birthdays that you've seen come about. And those birthdays came about over one of our officers, Officer Sam Schallenberger. He came to us and said, hey, I was driving through Willoughby escorting the teachers around, and there was a little girl holding a sign. And her sign says, I lost a tooth today. And that just kind of tugged at his heartstrings, because that little girl, normally, if she was in the classroom, they would probably celebrate that milestone for that child. Well, they couldn't. So she just had a little poster as the teachers drove by. So he thought of birthdays. And birthdays are normally milestones at a young age in elementary school that are widely celebrated in classrooms or amongst groups of friends, because that's an accomplishment for the child. It brings them joy, brings them happiness. And he said there's about 1/12 of our community's children who are missing out on birthdays while we are under these precautions. And he said, how about we do this? So we jumped on it. And what we've seen from it is a lot of support, a lot of joy, and a lot of happiness, not only to the child and their family, but the neighbors in the community. I went with them on a couple, and they're welling their sirens. They're pulling up to the house. The child comes out, the family comes out, but then you look around and you hear people saying happy birthday from a distance. Everyone's on their front porch wishing this child a happy birthday. So something small like that goes a long way. And if you think about it too, some people question, well, does it take away from department resources to do that? It doesn't. Our guys, they can't be as proactive now with the precautions. It brings our officers into neighborhoods. They have to patrol and drive around anyway. They're using, personal protective equipment that's washable. They're not being wasteful with their equipment. But then we're building relationships with this child who will be older someday. And we're instilling in them that the police department is here to help you. It's important to be safe. And as you get older in age, as teenager years and come into adulthood, that mindset is still with them, that the police officers were there for me when I was in elementary school. I need to support them as well.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Y'all have done such a good job with that. And you've done it consistently. I think all of us who live in the community, we understand how hard you're working at communicating with us. We get Nixle alerts on our phones. If I get it on my phone, I'll get it in an email as well, and so on. And so we know what's going on in the neighborhood. We know if there is something adverse happening in the community, we know y'all are on it, and we know kind of how that's resolved and what we need to do in response to that. And so that's been huge. Captain, you've also, as far as I can tell, led the way in our city, in particular, and perhaps even in our larger greater Nashville area, in terms of social media presence.
Right.
You've really leveraged that in a big way. I'm not going to call you a rock star, but, in some circles, you're kind of a rock star, and you're just out there letting us know what's going on, and particularly, and we'll come to the tornado that hit our town just about a month ago. We'll come to that in a moment, but talk to us just briefly about why you felt social media is such an important part of what you do every day.
Mm-hmm. So that goes back to building relationships with the community and having good communication. Social media is a tool for us to easily provide information to the community about what is happening. And if we can keep our community informed, in the know about what their officers are doing, it builds community support, but it also shows the community what their services are doing for them. Right? Their taxpayers goes to this service. here's what your officers do every day to keep you safe. But also, we're going to provide you with important information, such as through the nixles on the emergency alerts, to keep yourself safe, but also help us, because it's, most of the time we send out a nixle if we're looking for a suspect. We find the suspect because a citizen sees them walking down the street and calls us, lets us know, hey, I see the guy you're looking for. We swarm the area. We take the person into custody. If you think at any given time, there's probably, I put an average number, maybe 10 to 8 police officers working at any given time. They can only do so much. But if we can engage our entire community, all those different eyes that are out there, be on the lookout for a bad person and help us find them, it really helps us capture the bad guy. So the communication helps us tremendously, but it also, I think, helps our community stay safe and keep informed about what we're doing every day. This doesn't come, what happens here on social media happens in a lot of agencies across the nation. And I'm part of an organization called the National Information Officers Association. We're a group of what you call public information officers across public safety. We have yearly trainings, and we're constantly staying updated on trends. And there's a lot of success out of using social media, and that's why we continue to use that. But we all share ideas off of everyone, such as live video streams that we're doing now, the live video updates we provide during emergency situations, and just ongoing events that we're providing. It brings in a lot of engagement, more than just posting a photo or a media release of type. The engagement I see on analytics from live video is so much greater than what we would ever get off a photo of or text. And it allows for that engagement back and forth, because just like now, you and I are able to engage here. When we do a live video, I'm able to read the comments that people are posting and able to respond back to those comments. So it's more conversational. It builds trust. There's more of a community connection with that, not just a photo or something typed on a piece of paper or sent out as a media release.
Yeah, y'all have done a great job in breaking down walls and barriers that sometimes a uniform can be intimidating to folks,
Right.
even folks doing the right thing. It represents authority, and it represents a lot of things that intimidate people sometimes.
Right.
And so y'all have done a great job in personalizing your work so that we can all kind of be a part of keeping our community safe and healthy as we go forward. And well, let's turn our attention just for the next segment of our time. A tornado came through our town a little over a month ago, and you were on the ground, I'm sure just seconds or minutes after it passed through. Can you just give us a little bit of your perspective, just from a personal level, of what you experienced that night, and then we'll talk about our community's response and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of my duties here too is watching out for any threat to our community that's incoming. So we noticed that we would possibly have severe storms that night as a police department, and I set my alarm to wake myself up just before it was scheduled to come through, in which it did. It woke me up. So when I woke up, I knew it was in Dixon and dropping those hailstones, and it wasn't tornadic at that time. Continued to watch it, and it became tornadic once it was in Nashville. So at that point, that's when like your alert level personally just escalates tremendously. So I got dressed knowing that I would probably need to go in or be prepared to go in should something happen. At my house, I got in the basement as the tornado warning hit our community. I had the radio on. I was updating our dispatch on the location of the storm. One thing that's provided to law enforcement and emergency management is a special program that's directly connected to the weather service. And the meteorologist and the weather service office are texting back and forth through this portal before they issue the warning. So they're letting us know exactly where this tornado is tracking through the area. And this tornado was originally tracking from Hermitage going towards Lebanon Road, basically headed towards your church.
Right.
Was the original track, but it stopped for a period of time, rotated, and then took a straight due east track. So at the time, we were telling our officers, get off of Lebanon Road. That's the corridor of the tornado. Head south. And as I listened, one of the officers was across from Valley Center, and he said, I can hear the tornado I believe it's south of me. I'm hearing the power flashes. I'm going to take cover. That officer had to force himself into a bathroom at one of the businesses to take cover. It was a
Mm.
locked bathroom. He busted through the door to take cover, and the tornado passed over. And we knew it hit Triple Crown when one of our detectives got on the radio and said, "Hey, it just hit my house. My house is destroyed. I see destruction everywhere. People need help." And so she started to, I guess, talk about what resources she needed in that area. And that's kind of how we knew as a city, we've been impacted by a tornado, and a significant tornado. So I called the deputy chief and said, "Hey, we have been impacted by a tornado. We have certain terms that we use in policy, which is called a department-wide emergency or a tactical alert. That's by policy. It means we trigger an all-call, bringing in all of our staff in immediately
Mm.
to respond to this tornado. So we did a tactical alert and department-wide emergency. So everyone had to respond to the city to help out. Um, and they did that. And what I saw was just everyone coming together, doing what they needed to do. Our officers being heroes at every house they went to, whether it's crawling through a small window in a garage to find someone who's trapped, removing debris off of someone to get someone out. Literally everywhere they went, they were saving lives. And what came to my mind is, like, I thought, well, would these people be okay if they stayed there for a little bit till a search and rescue team got there? And really not, because you had a lady who was 94. She was covered in debris, bricks, walls from her home, and they hurt her in that house, and they just pulled all that off of her. I don't think a 94-year-old person could lay like that with brick and debris on top of them for a long period of time. But they were able to pull debris off of her and save her life. And this happened with a lot of people in Triple Crown,
Mm.
the Catalpa area, and Clearview, and so on. And it's just amazing to see what they did. They used their training. We used our training as a department to coordinate all the activities. That command and control and incident command type system all came together.
Mm.
Tons of people came to help us. We had agencies from Murfreesboro, Gallatin, all these different law enforcement agencies, the TWRA, Highway Patrol. Everyone was coming to Mount Juliet to help Mount Juliet.
Yeah.
Our citizens were wanting to help as much as they could. And it really, when you see tragedy like this, it really brings out the best in people, I think, because you see people performing way above 100%, doing whatever they need to do to help their community. And that's what I saw is performance shot out the roof, and people were heroes every minute, every hour,
Yeah.
going through there and doing what they could to help people.
Yeah, it was really amazing, and we've said it a lot. We would never want a tornado to come through our town or any other town,
Absolutely not.
but what we saw was amazing, and the community came together. So there was an initial response of just a life-saving response, making sure people were as safe as they possibly could be, and then certainly cross domains from police and fire to businesses and churches and nonprofits. In the coming days, a lot of us came together as well. Can you talk about that and how that impacted what you saw in that, and just from your perspective, and then how that impacted the work that you do every day and the work that the city was really doing to help us rebuild?
Sure. And that is that thing that probably initially stressed out us as a police department with worry is, how do we handle recovery? What do we do with 6,000 people who want to volunteer? And how do we continue to ensure everyone in our community is taken care of after this emergency response? Because normally the police department, fire department, we're good at emergency response, handling the issue, but we didn't really have anything that was clear on recovery for our community. So the volunteer aspect came first. We basically needed to find a way to put a stopgap in to have organized volunteers. We did that through the volunteer portal online. And then our city leaders reached out to Everyone's Wilson, which, you head that up and help organize it. It's a group of local pastors who have always met previously to this. This organization has been around prior to the tornado. And when that call was made, it's like everything just bloomed like a flower and began to help everyone instantly with organizing the volunteers and recovery. I think of people like you. I think of uh, Andrew at Victory Baptist Church
Right.
off Tate Lane. I think of Regina Girton at Providence. And to me, y'all are all just lifesavers in what occurred, because y'all took something that we weren't well versed in as a police or fire department, and y'all took it and ran with it. Because normally with faith-based organizations, you're there for the people. You're there to support people and help people and move them forward to ensure they're well taken care of. So that was already there. It was just kind of refocused to help
Mm.
people in need who are impacted by disaster. So the volunteer efforts were organized. The continued recovery efforts continue to be organized to ensure people get the recovery that they need. But that was just amazing. And
Yeah.
getting the feedback from FEMA, all the different federal agencies and other what I call national nonprofit groups like Samaritan Purse that came in, um, the Salvation Army that came in, they were shocked to
Mm.
see the level of, I guess, preparedness or level we were in the recovery stage, because we were already at the point where we needed to be that they would normally come in to help organize.
Yeah.
They were just shocked by it. And the only way I can say that probably worked good as it did is because we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. That wheel was already there with everyone's Wilson. It was just able to come together and flourish with that call for help, and it did.
Yeah.
And it continues to work well. It worked well. There's very few requests that come in now for need. Obviously, all those requests are being handled, but there's very few. You would think there would be so much more beyond what happened, but it's like everyone just went out there and started helping people, and people got to a point where they received all the help they possibly could, until obviously their insurance would kick in, or folks are still waiting for debris to be cleaned up, which is still coming
Mm.
with the city bid for that vendor to clean up the construction debris. But that was amazing, that
Yeah.
I thought, and it's a blessing to know that we had that available, and that once the single phone call was made, that's all it took, and it just rolled in motion and moved forward as quick as it could.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really a neat deal. And obviously I'm honored to be a part of that, but a real
Mhm.
small part, really. And that's the beauty of it, that people like Regina and Andrew and others work so hard in a tactical way on the ground
Right.
and organizing folks in just in such a proficient way. It's just
Mhm.
just crazy, but also the relationships. And this is, if other cities or other communities are listening in at some point, just the, if and we wonder whether and you may wonder if it's worth building the relationships and crossing lines, in the community, cross domains and public service or nonprofit churches, businesses, education, healthcare. Man, it is worth it. I mean, it
Right.
like you said, a tornado, as bad as it was, it really caused these relationships to bloom and to flourish in a way that I think all of us knew were possible, but we just it's never been put to the test
Right.
until recently. But well, on the heels of the tornado recovery, we were hit by a virus that is really, it's not only a pandemic and it's terrible, but it's historic for any of us. I think all of us are learning new rhythms. How has this adjustment affected you, the work your department does? And then we'll come back around to how we can be a part of the solution. But to talk to us about how your department's working through the coronavirus and the threat it poses.
So the biggest threat that we see as a department relates to our employees, because we have to ensure that we have a healthy workforce that can continue to serve and continue to respond to calls for service and keep this community safe. What our worry is that we're going to have multiple people infected who cannot work, and we're not going to have enough people to staff the street. So that's why we had to implement precautions to keep them safe, such as wearing face masks, wearing gloves on all their calls for service. The officers are not allowed back in the police department to congregate at roll calls. They have to stay outside in their cars. They have to limit their exposure to one another. They're pre-screened before they come to work by their temperature, checking for symptoms.
Wow.
And when they're encountering people out in the community, they have to maintain their social distance, again, with the mask and the gloves. If there is a report, that can be taken over the phone. Reports are being taken over the phone. So we are doing everything we can with also keeping the city safe by also limiting contact and physical distancing ourselves with the public. Sadly, criminals aren't very, I guess, responsible, right?
Yeah.
They don't really care about others. That's why they're out doing what they're doing, or they may be influenced by drugs or other means. And they're not thinking about safety. They're not thinking about the safer at home order that's in place. So we still have calls to go to. We still have people wanting to steal every day and shoplift and bring stolen cars into our community and try to break into cars in our community. So our officers are still doing what they can to prevent that from happening. Now, people probably see way more patrols than they've always said. They may see less blue lights and less traffic stops, but they
Yeah.
see a lot more patrols in neighborhoods and in the retail areas, because we want them to be as visible as they've ever been visible before, because being visible is also a deterrent to crime. At looking at trends and looking at what stuff is happening in our community, and this really goes to looking after your neighbor and your friends, is with stress and anxiety that this virus brings. Stress related to losing a job, stress related to potentially becoming infected by this virus, stress from your
Mm-hmm.
family members, stress from being cooped up with everyone for so long and not being able to breathe at times. We're noticing our mental illness calls going up.
Mm-hmm.
This time last year, we had one suicide call in 30 days. So far during this COVID period, we've had 8.
Wow.
And sadly, with 2 completions.
Wow.
So that's why we want people to look after each other, because we're noticing that is trending up, and we need to check on our friends, need to check on our neighbors and our family members to make sure that they are coping with this okay. And if someone thinks that they aren't, just give us a call. We'll put them in touch with professional resources who can help them.
Wow.
And if there is someone who is experiencing stress related to this, we want them to also reach out to us so we can get them the resources that they need, because this is a temporary time in our lives that may seem dark, but there is plenty of light at the end of this tunnel, and our community, our nation is going to learn from this. We're going to grow from this, and we're going to come out stronger once it's over. And it'll be over soon. And it's not going to be over tomorrow or the next week, but it'll be over soon, and we will be able to push forward as a nation. So that's why we're just hoping that people look after each other. It's troubling to see the suicide numbers going up, and with mental illness, with suicide, it kind of breaks your heart, because you wish you could see that someone maybe had stress and anxiety that was leading to that path, but you can't sometimes. And it's the fact that you don't know to help someone who needs help.
Yeah.
And that's why we just hope that anyone who needs help, just call us. So sometimes we may not know you need help, and we need you to reach out to get the help that you need.
Oh, that's huge,
Mhm.
Captain. I appreciate you bringing that up. And I don't know that a lot of people that'll listen in are aware that you receive those calls, and
Right.
that the mental health and mental illness is an area, a segment of your work,
Mhm.
and how you serve our community. So I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. I know as
Sure.
pastors and other just community leaders, we are aware that taking care of each other is the best thing we can do at this
Mm.
point. And
Absolutely.
checking on each other, and
Right.
just personalizing our outreach to folks, whether that's a phone call or a
Mhm.
text message or whatever, but just that we're looking out for our neighbors. And certainly that's fundamental to who we are as a people of faith, that loving our neighbors is a big part of what we do.
Right.
And so we want to be found faithful in all that during these days. Well, uh,
Absolutely.
Captain Chandler, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you and
Sure.
appreciate the department and what you do. And we want to be a part of the solution, for you. We want for you to see us as partners in keeping our community safe and healthy. And certainly everyone's Wilson, the group that we've talked about, one of our priorities is that everyone is safe. And so you and your department your team members' spouses and their families are important to us. And so when you know of a need that we can help meet, we want to stand in the gap for you as well. And so we're praying for you and
Thank you.
cheering for you and want to support you in every way we can. So we're super grateful. And thanks for being with me on the community conversations today.
Yeah, it was fun. First Zoom meeting, and it looks
First
like it went
Zoom.
well. So I
Yeah.
appreciate the invite. Thank you so much, and appreciate all that everyone's Wilson does. Appreciate what you do to build up our community, and that's important. Is continue to build each other up. If you haven't heard from a friend, a neighbor, or a family member in a while, reach out to them, see if they're okay, see if there is anything you can do for them, and then of course to prevent this spread, we just need to follow the safer at home guidelines. And if we can stay home, do your best to stay home. And that's what we ask of folks who want to support our first responders or support our nurses and doctors out there on the front lines. Is we have to stop the spread. And the only way to do that is if we stay physically distanced from each other. So that's the main message we're pushing, is stay distant so we can stop the spread.
Awesome. Thanks for the good word. I appreciate it, Tyler.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
All
you.
right.
Take care.